A young boy lies to a girl to impress her, but there are some unintended consequences. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today, it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about a short story of interest, and one that is about racquetball and crushes. I am referring to The Challenge by Gary Soto, which was written in 1993. For those who don't know, Gary Soto is a Mexican-American writer who's been writing since the 1960s. He primarily writes young adult fiction, although at least one of his memoirs is called Why I Don't Write for Children or something like that, which I think is probably more to do with like why I don't write aimed at children. I write for general audiences, and it turns out that what he's writing is aimed at young adults. Maybe unintended or whatnot. But he's written memoirs, plays, scripts, various stuff like that. And again, a lot of what he's writing about is high school or middle school students, as you see in what I'm talking about today. And other authors have praised his poetry as well as his other writings. Somewhat of a celebrated writer. I have heard of this writer before. I think I encountered some of their work in middle school, but I can't recall anything specific that I read from him. But I'd be more than willing to read some of his other work, because this short story was pretty good. I'm definitely going to recommend it to you out there. And so without further ado, let's talk about The Challenge. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Challenge focuses on Jose. He is a middle school boy who is crushing on a new girl at his school, a girl named Estela. It's funny because the first way that he notices her is at lunch, where he's like, "Wow, this girl can eat quite a bit. I have to get to know her more," which is a very strange way, but middle schoolers are weird like that. But unfortunately, as he tries to talk to her and whatnot, nothing he does seems to get her attention. He tries to proclaim good grades in school. Whenever he does well on a test, he announces it really loudly, but she doesn't notice. He thinks about falling in front of her, which is what he's done for another girl in the past, but he just got bruised at that time, and no one seemed to notice, so it doesn't really want to do that. And he also thinks about trying to be suave, but something stops him from approaching her. And finally, he just notices that she likes racquetball, and so Jose decides to talk to her about it, and he ends up challenging her to a game of racquetball. But in the process, he lies to her and says that he's won a couple tournaments, which is not good, because she's going to know almost immediately that he's lying. To practice, Jose grabs a tennis ball and starts playing with it at his home, but he's bad at it, and doubt begins to come to him as he realizes what he's done and how he's going to embarrass himself. It's also revealed that this girl Estela also goes by the name Stinger, which we don't immediately find out why she is called that, but we will later in the story. And on the Friday where they've scheduled the game, Jose shows up, and then Estela shows up quite prepared. She has knee pads and a racket and everything, whereas Jose does not have that. So she's immediately seeing through his ruse here. And as the game starts, Estela kind of annihilates Jose, scoring point after point after point, all the way getting to close to 21, where the game will end. At one point, Estela hits Jose in the back, with the ball, which is where she gets the name Stinger, and It's even implied that she misses a point, and it's implied that she gave that point to him. She let him score at least 1 point, so as either because she's attracted to him or out of a sense of pity. But it doesn't really make Jose feel better because she beats him like 21-1, and the game is over from there, and they go their separate ways. Jose goes back to his uncle's house and shows what happened with the girl. He doesn't really feel like lying that he lost to a girl. But he also doesn't really want to talk to Estela, but he also knows that she might challenge him in the future, and so he begins training in an effort to get better and get to the skill level that he said he was going to be at in the first place. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a fair bit to talk about with this story. It's quite funny. I think Soto does some really quality writing here, it's quite somewhat familiar to me because we all lie to impress those that we find attractive and whatnot. Sometimes we lie. It might be in minor ways to impress them, and sometimes that comes back to bite us in the butt, as it does here. And so one of the themes that Soto is writing about is the idea of the crush, or what we do to sort of impress others. Soto hilariously displays Jose's attempts to get this girl's attention. It's very funny, and it's relatable. It's something that we can all sort of understand, as we all might have crushes or have had crushes in the past. Jose uses his grades to try to impress the girl, but she's not really impressed by that, or she isn't noticing his attempts to talk about his grades. He attempts some clown stuff, but he holds back on that, and he tries to be suave, but I don't think she's responsive to that either. So it's one after another. But what Soto is pointing out in the story is sometimes you have to connect with common interest. In this case, the girl is interested in racquetball, so talk to her about racquetball. That's bound to get her attention, and it does. He's willing to talk to her about something that she's interested, not just something that he's interested in. Of course, there is an issue here, and that's during this conversation, Jose lies. And I think another thing that Soto is saying here is lying is not helpful, because sometimes people can really see through you when you're lying about a common interest. But also, eventually someone's going to figure out the truth, and I doubt Estela is really happy that she learned that Jose was lying to her in the first place, especially because it seemed like she wanted actual competition here. She seems very invested in racquetball, whereas Jose was, just trying to smooch on her or something like that. There's a good question to ask at the end of this. At the end of the story, is Estela interested in Jose? You could say no, because she smacks him in the back with a ball. Although that can just be related to her name, because she hits people sometimes, which isn't good. Or you could say she is interested because she let him score a point, indicating she was kind of amused by him this whole time. Or it could also mean that she took pity on him, so she's probably not interested. I probably wouldn't be interested if someone lied to me like that, unless they were, attractive or something like that. Maybe that might change my mind. But I have to say, it does seem more like pity here. I think what Gary Soto is trying to say there is just that, don't lie, but also find that common interest and try to relate to that, or just, ask someone about it. I think that's the sort of main idea there. But Soto is also talking about the consequences of Jose's actions in this story, sort of cause and effect. Jose lies, so what happens? And ultimately, lying cost Jose not too much, but something significant in this story. And we see that cost come in the form of like self-doubt, because after he lies, he's like, oh, I probably shouldn't have lied to her like that. That was probably a mistake. And he begins doubting himself, and he realizes that once racquetball is kind of hard when he's practicing, that he's not good at it, and she's probably gonna see through it if she's any good at it. And then there's that additional worry, like the consequences of like worrying and realizing that you're doomed when Estela comes to the game fully prepared and in her gear and everything, indicating that she's done this before, and so she's not a casual player, and so she's gonna know whether or not you're good. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. Estela arrived, greeting Jose with a jerk of her chin and a "hey dude." She was dressed in white sweats, a pair of protective goggles dangled around her neck like a necklace, and she wore sweatbands on both wrists. She opened a can of balls and rolled one out into her palm, squeezing it so tightly that her forearm rippled with muscle. When she smacked the ball against the wall so hard that the echo hurt his ears, Jose realized that he was in trouble. He felt limp as a dead fish. Which is a very fun quote from this. Just that realization that your lying has gotten you in over your head and you're about to get deeply embarrassed, and many other things are about to go wrong for you. Gary Soto does that particularly well here. I just love this reveal that this woman is far more competent than you will ever maybe hope to be in this sport, and you have doomed yourself to something fierce here. And so what ends up, the major consequences to this are the shame of losing. It doesn't feel good to lose, especially when you're trying to impress somebody, and Jose has to deal with that. And then there's that loss of social reputation where that girl is not going to be impressed by you, and she might not consider you as a potential romantic partner, especially in middle school. She might just find this amusing more so than anything else, and she might have seen through Jose's lies to begin with, so this is her joy in punishing someone who she knew was lying to her. And so Soto is having, at the end of the story, Soto is having Jose train, and that seems to be indicative of him learning a lesson here, of seeing the consequences to his actions and wanting to become better, maybe to challenge Estela down the road. He says he's not interested in her, but maybe he is interested in her. Maybe there's an attempt to sort of keep building that relation up and hoping that she'll challenge him and redeem himself in her eyes. That remains to be seen. That's sort of beyond what the story is doing here, but you can always look at the long-term impact, and it's fun to do that sometimes. I do like this short story quite a bit, but there is just one weird area where Gary Soto is writing how bright Jose is, and he uses a simile where he says he was as bright as a cop's flashlight in your face. And that's a really weird simile to write, because why are you introducing a cop into this story? Also, it doesn't seem like Jose is a particularly bad kid, so why would he have any knowledge of how of that brightness? That seems like a weird simile to make, especially when you're talking about Latino families. Like maybe he's trying to make a point about the police or something, but this feels like the wrong venue to be doing that given the subject matter of the story. It doesn't sink the story, but it just feels like an out of left field kind of simile that doesn't make sense within the context of the overall story. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Challenge by Gary Soto. Pretty good short story. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I'm going to be thinking about it for a little bit. It's very enjoyable, well written, and I like the reveal in the middle of the story where Estela is actually far better than Jose will ever be. I definitely recommend that you go and read this. I'll put a link to it in the description. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Would love to have a conversation with you about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this writer or the short story if they don't already know. Also join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about books, movies, or other such things. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and racquetball playing travels. Farewell.